Hey everybody, welcome to Sex is Medicine, your number one resource on holistic sex education on the internet. My name is Devi Ward-Erickson and I am so delighted to be here with you once again. We are getting so much wonderful feedback from all of our new and old subscribers, so thank you so much for tuning in every week. And you can catch us on Spotify, iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, all the media outlets, all the major podcast outlets, and then you can also find us at authentictantra.com, and we have a page about the podcast that you can listen to all the previous episodes right there on our website, authentictantra.com. So thank you once again. Today, I'm really excited about the show because we're going to be talking about a topic that doesn't get very much attention. It kind of remains shoved aside and in the shadows, and yet it is an experience that affects a numerous amount of women on this planet. And that is healing after a miscarriage. And so according to statistics, as many as 10 to 20% of pregnancies, known pregnancies, end in miscarriage. So that's as many as 1 in 4 known pregnancies. And we say known pregnancies because women have miscarriages before they even know that they're pregnant quite often. But when we're talking about known pregnancies, and particularly those pregnancies that are wanted, that are cherished, that are desired, the experience of having a miscarriage can be devastating for the woman and her family, and yeah, everyone involved. So we wanted to talk about that from a compassionate perspective, talk about how Tantra can help that healing process. And to join us in this conversation, I have my wonderful colleagues here with us today. In our upper left-hand corner, we have the beautiful Sunshine Ryan, who, along with being a certified authentic Tantra practitioner, also specializes in blissful births. And then underneath me, we have the co-founder of the Institute, Alaina Salks. And I was just going to say, I got a little tongue-tied there because I'm so grateful and so honored to have you both, and so grateful to have Alaina as one of our team members and founding members of our school, because we wouldn't be able to do all the magic that we do in the world without Alaina and Marcy, our co-founders. So Sunshine, we'll start with you. Could you just share a little bit about yourself and why you have the authority to talk on the topic of birth? Like, what is your background?
So I am Sunshine Ryan. I am a biracial, self-employed, single mother of 5. I am a Tantra practitioner, a certified sexologist, and also my own creation, a Maya birthing coach. I have been helping people give birth for about 8 years. I was practicing Doula in Hawaii. And what I like to do now is weave Tantra principles with natural, pain-free, blissful birthing experiences.
Wow. I love that. I love that. And so you have all the qualifications necessary to be talking about birth, but also miscarriage, right? Because I'm sure in your work that happens. Correct. Yeah. Exactly. Wonderful.
Yes. Birth is a wide field.
There's many aspects to it.
There is. And that's why I love Tantra, because it weaves together the connection part into bringing in happy, successful, amazing births.
Yeah. And healthy children with healthy brains, which is really important.
Yes.
Trauma-free births, right?
Trauma-free births. Exactly.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. And then Alaina, it was actually your idea to have this episode because you had an experience recently of having a miscarriage from a pregnancy that you wanted. And then even more recently, you have a beautiful, beautiful baby boy. He is so adorable. Oh my God, you guys, like, I don't know if we can post a picture, so I don't want to offer that, but if we're able to, he is so cute. He is literally like one of the cutest babies I've ever seen. And so he really is. And so you wanted to have this conversation because of your own experience and because it would be, to bring healing essentially and to have a conversation that not many people are having, particularly in the realm of sexology and sex education.
Yeah. So, again, I'm Alaina Salks. I'm a certified authentic Tantra practitioner, co-founder of the Institute of Authentic Tantra, and also a certified sexologist. And so when I went through my miscarriage, one of the things that was really striking to me was I had not heard a whole lot about miscarriage prior to experiencing it myself. So I'd only really heard about it from my mother, who had had a miscarriage between my brother and my birth. But beyond that, I knew that they happened, but I kind of only ever paid attention to them in, dramatized reenactments on television, right? But when I had my miscarriage, what was really astounding to me is that suddenly so many people around me appeared to talk to me about their experience of their own miscarriages. And I realized that all of these people are walking around having experienced this, but you don't get a window into that world until you are part of that club, the miscarriage club. And so what occurred to me is that I feel like if you don't talk about it, if you don't have those people arise, it could probably be a really lonely experience. And part of what inspired me to suggest this is that there are some women in my community that I'm friends with who are really comfortable with being vulnerable on social media, who've been through some pretty extreme miscarriages the last few years, and they have done this beautiful work sharing what they experience on social media. And it occurred to me that it's such a healing experience to hear other people's stories. And being vulnerable on Facebook is not my thing, but being vulnerable here is perfectly fine for me. So I thought it is something we could talk about. And when I went through my miscarriage, I also used a lot of tools from our Tantra toolkit. So I thought it would be a wonderful thing to explore.
Yeah. And I love what you shared about the need to be talking about it as a society, but also the huge role that community plays in healing. Having a miscarriage can be a traumatic event. And if we're not able to talk about it to help to process it, then that compounds the trauma. So the necessity of there being space in our society for women to openly talk about it and not feel guilt and shame, to be able to grieve openly, I think is really, really critical to the healing process. And it sounds like, that was your experience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really critical for me. And one of the things that I also noted, and I'm curious about, is this practice that we have in our country of not telling anyone that we're pregnant until after the first trimester. And so when I got pregnant in 2018 with the pregnancy that ended in miscarriage, I was really, really excited about it because my husband and I had been we just started the process of trying to get pregnant. We got pregnant pretty quickly, and I didn't really want to keep it a secret. And so I thought about it, and I knew that the rationale behind keeping it a secret is that many miscarriages happen within the first trimester, right? But to me, I thought, well, I want to share this, and if I do have a miscarriage, I also want people to know about it. I want to have that support. And that's what ended up happening for me. I did tell some of my closest friends and family, and then I was able to also tell them that I had the miscarriage, which was difficult, of course, to have to go back and let them know that things didn't work out. But it was really beautiful to have that support. And what also occurred to me when thinking about this is that we've created a rule around this, and I sat down with myself and I analyzed whether that rule would work for me. But I wonder how many people get pregnant and just follow the rule because it's a rule that's out there. And also, what does that rule tell us about how we're supposed to behave culturally around miscarriage? So if you're not supposed to tell anyone in the first trimester, how many people maybe wanted some more support around their miscarriage, but felt like they couldn't ask for it or they couldn't tell people? It almost feels like a holdover from the 50s when you didn't tell people your nasty business, right? But
yeah,
and for some people that's sorry. Go ahead.
No, I would love to throw in a little bit more history.
Oh, please.
On the 50s, but it actually goes way back before that. So
okay.
Sadly, women were always blamed for miscarriages. And this even used to be an account. If you had a miscarriage, it actually mean that you were cheating, you were unfaithful, and you could be punished for infidelity. And so a lot of this nonsense that we get in pregnancy and in miscarriages has just came down through the ages. And so we get a lot of stuff about pregnancy that's just not true. Like some people believe like you're not supposed to dance or bounce, or you're not supposed to have anyone touch your belly, or you're not supposed to ever get frightened, and you're not supposed to even like feel your emotions. Like all of this is just passed down through the ages.
Yeah.
And we still unfortunately believe in a lot of this nonsense that's just not true.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Sunshine. And what occurs to me is if you're not telling anyone in the first trimester and you lose the pregnancy, then again, you're left on this island. You're left in isolation to grieve and to mourn, right? And then also it's treating it like it's a dirty little secret. Like it's your shame to carry. Like it's, it's your, like, my body failed me. And I've heard from other women that that's the way they, that's the thought process is like, my body failed me. I failed. I'm not a full woman. And there's so much shame and so much grief, and then we have to experience it in isolation.
Right, exactly. And I feel like this really needs to become a part of our culture, and it needs to be spoken, and it needs to be noted with rituals and ceremonies and things of this nature, so that the women can heal, but also so the partners and the spouses can heal from it also. Because the women aren't talking about it, but also the men and the partners are not talking about it either. Yeah. Which I find is just devastating as a whole on both sides.
Yeah. So what are some of, we're talking about why it's unhealthy, essentially, it sounds like unhealthy to not tell anybody for the first 3 months. I mean, I guess, listeners out there, it's your choice. You follow the rules that you want to, but in this context, we're saying, wow. So like if you have a miscarriage and you haven't told anyone, then you're left alone to your own grief. So what are some of the emotions that don't get processed, that may arise, but then don't get processed through having this type of experience?
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful question. First, I want to hit on why people maybe choose to wait. And just because a lot of times they want something more tangible, right? Like their body is going through massive changes, and then they're just like, it's my prerogative, I don't want to tell anybody. And that's totally fine. And then, sometimes they want to hear the first heartbeat. And then they want to go get the ultrasound first and then tell people, because then it seems a little more real to them themselves. But a time where you really want to speak out, even in early pregnancy, is if you work in an unsafe place. If you're having a hard time just adjusting and you're trying to just figure out what your body's doing. And the other thing not to wait is, like you were saying, like that gossip. Sometimes it causes like family issues because you told your brother but not your sister or whatever, right? And then that way you can just tell everybody who you want to tell, or not tell who you want to tell. But those are some of the reasons why people sometimes wait and sometimes not wait. Did you want to add? You guys can add.
You're asking about the emotions that you're left with?
Yeah, well, in a moment. So we're just kind of circling back to like why to tell in the first trimester or not to tell. And it sounds like also meet needs for privacy, right? Some people just want to be, private and whatever until everything's a little bit more established, right? So just wanting to validate your choice, you listeners out there, about when and how you want to inform your world about your pregnancy, and just pointing out that rule, as you said, Alaina, the rule is like, question the rule. Where does it come from? Why is it imposed? And is it a rule that you want to agree to, right? And what are the consequences for you if you do end up having, a miscarriage and feeling isolated and having to grieve alone? So exactly. Just things to consider, just wanting to put that out there. So when we do have a miscarriage in the first trimester, and I would say even, we're talking about the first trimester here, but there's people who miscarry in the second trimester, which I would imagine is, even more devastating and heartbreaking. And, so just like the whole experience is when you lose a pregnancy that you want, regardless of where it happens, it's going to be heartbreaking.
Yes.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think even our view on miscarriage, you know, miscarriages are a part of reproductive lives for women. Like that is known and people need to know that, right? Like it happens. And like you said in the very beginning, it happens 1 in 4.
That's a lot.
So that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's very often. And so we actually need to rewrite our perspective on miscarriage. And I did find something that was from the Buddhist philosophy. And so they said that they actually believed that the souls of the children would hang around the parents and wait for the opportunity of when to jump into their life and activate the pregnancy. And so that spark and that chance at possibility also has a chance to work and not to work.
Yeah.
But at that moment, the soul can choose if it doesn't like that form, that physical form or the vessel that's being created, it can choose to pull itself out of that vessel and wait for another opportunity. And I thought that was absolutely beautiful. Like, what a great way to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That is a wonderful way to think about it. What were you gonna say, Alaina?
well, as a practicing Buddhist, that was my sense of the experience as well. My felt sense was just that for me it was a lot easier because I believe in reincarnation, and it did feel like that soul was present, like hanging out, ready to re-enter.
That's interesting that you bring that up, because now I'm remembering something when I was like many years ago, first being introduced to Tantra and studying with a Tibetan medicine practitioner. And one of the things that he said was that similarly that well, sex attracts spirits, you know, in this tradition, because it's like humans having pleasure, spirits like it, right? But then also they're waiting for an opportunity to like reincarnate. So they're like, I want to get up in there. And then something about that and the explanation, one of the explanations of why miscarriages may occur is that when the consciousness, it enters in this tradition, it enters in the heart through the heart center, and then the feminine essence goes to the bottom and the masculine essence goes to the crown. So feminine at the root, masculine at the top. And so when the consciousness enters into the developing fetus and tries to move the energy, if there's any obstructions or the energy doesn't move properly or with ease, or they sense any potential defects, that they'll withdraw. And that is the cause of the miscarriage. Yeah, and that's part of the, you know, Tibetan medicine, according to what I understand. So that is could be a very soothing, you know, perspective.
Yeah.
Cool. So we mentioned trauma, we mentioned grief. So what are some other things that it's very common for women to experience after miscarrying a desired pregnancy?
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with how the miscarriage took place.
Yeah.
And so, was it a natural miscarriage? Did you have to have a surgical procedure? And what is leading up to that current moment? And then also, if the person is being supported or unsupported, and who's caring for you, and how are they treating you?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that, and then right now we're going through so much in the world that those just tack on to the miscarriage, right? So it can be amplified in a sense. And so you can feel so many different things. And I just want to really point out that all emotions are normal, and there's no right way to feel, and feeling a bunch of different emotions is totally normal and totally okay. So feeling sadness or having just uncontrollable bouts of crying is totally normal. Feeling exhausted, feeling tired, feeling shocked, feeling numb, feeling confused, even feeling totally out of control, maybe jealous, maybe empty, maybe lonely. Like all of these things are going to come up, and you're going to feel all these because you're going through a process, through a grieving process.
Yeah, for me, I went through pretty much all of the stages of grief through the process. And my situation was really probably kind of unusual in that I knew that I was going to miscarry prior to starting my miscarriage. So I had started having like a tiny bit of bleeding during my pregnancy early on, but not anything that was too out of the ordinary. You know, sometimes when you're pregnant, your cervix can bleed a little bit because it gets really thin. And it was start and stop. It wasn't what you would associate with, starting a period or starting miscarriage. And I had visited my midwife at the time, and she decided to draw some blood, and she called me and informed me that my progesterone levels were too low for the point that I was at, so that I was likely headed towards a miscarriage, or that we'd completely messed up the dates. So I had some really interesting time to process what was about to happen prior to it happening. So I went through, obviously devastation and grief, but then also I really went through a denial phase as well, because I was still pregnant. I hadn't started this process yet. And then also a lot of anger, because I had some really bad experiences with my medical doctor, which is actually what drove me to seek the help of a midwife prior to that, and just felt a lot of anger in and around my entire experience, trying to figure out what was going on with my body and the medical system. So
yeah. As we're talking about this, I'm realizing that, some of our listeners may have had a miscarriage recently or long ago. And so, you may be triggered by some of what you're sharing. And so I just want to, offer some compassion and some acknowledgement and some recognition that this can be a really difficult conversation. So Sunshine, when someone, how do you help people process and heal? Because, there's the experience that we have, or we're having, going through these emotions, and there's the other side of that. And then for many people, they may want to try again. So how do you support people in getting to the point where they have the courage, maybe, or the desire, the inspiration, they feel safe enough to try getting pregnant again?
Yeah, so I do a couple of different things. People usually contact me for womb healing, and you can use womb healing for so many different things. And when I used to hear the term womb healing, I thought it was just like this stupid, silly thing. And I was like, oh, come on. But then I figured out that I needed it so badly. So I was so connected with my womb space, but I didn't, that was like intuitive. Like I was just intuitively connected. And I loved being pregnant, and that's why I have so many kids and all of this, right? Like that was my power source. And then I made a really bad choice on birth control. And I'm not allowed to talk about what type of birth control because I'm in a lawsuit. But I made a really bad choice in birth control, and it almost killed me. And I had to get an emergency hysterectomy to save my life. And this devastated me. And I felt so violated and so mutilated and empty inside. And this is where I found the womb healing as my savior. And that's really where I get into some really good work. So some questions that people can be asking themselves is like, how do you heal that space that's been traumatized? And how do you bring that part of you back to life? And how do you focus right on that point? I also want to bring up that you can also get PTSD. Because this is a traumatic experience. PTSD is not just for sailors. I was going to say sailors, but
those too.
I love sailors. For military, it's not for people to just go to war. Like anybody can get PTSD. Again, it depends on what kind of experience you're going through. So out of the 4 women, 1 out of those 6 will have PTSD. feelings. And the thing about PTSD is that you can't get regular care. You can't go to like a therapist because you need something more holistic and more somatic, which brings us back to us and what we do and why it's so freaking amazing, because your womb space can become kind of like this junkyard for buried emotions, right? And so what we want to do is that we want to heal anything that's in there. And this is for people with or without a uterus. And that's why I call it a womb space, because it also can be used for men and women. And so what this does, this work, what it does is it helps you connect and relate to your feminine power source and your feminine qualities. And it helps you just tap into that strength and tap into your life force energy. So it's kind of like a plug-in to recharge yourself, because this is where life and creation and your fire source is starting to happen. So what I help you do is just tap back into the womb space, and it'll help you amplify things like your self-esteem, like your willpower. It will also help with money. Like if you activate this space and you're really connected, it's going to help you with pleasure. It's going to help you with your creativity. It's also going to help you with addictions. It's going to help you with family patterns, good or bad. It's also going to help you with your fight, flight, or freeze response. It's going to help you with pride, also on the negative and the positive side, and also with how you attach to people and problems.
Wow.
So all of that healing is coming from that space in your body. Like, just think about how powerful that is.
So we're talking about this in the context of a miscarriage, but that what you just described, it sounds like all humans. Because, we're all kind of fucking traumatized for being on this planet.
Yes, but I mean, for today, we're talking about miscarriage, but yes, that goes over to any kind of trauma that you're carrying. If you have it in that space in your pelvic area, like, we got to move it. We got to get it out. We got to shake it up a little bit. But I do have different ceremonies and rituals that I do just for miscarriages. I don't know if you want me to get into that now or.
Yeah, go for it. If you want to share a little bit about that.
Shoot. So what we want to do is we want to reconnect our womb space with our heart, right?
Yeah. Now, why?
Yeah. So we kind of feel like we've just let ourselves down, right? Like, you kind of get this feeling inside and you're like, what happened? And so there's a disconnect between our womb space and our heart space. And that's also, so you don't feel hurt again the next time, right?
Yeah.
And so things I like to do is invite more self-care and bring all the self-care in, like take it up another level, really start to focus on yourself and your needs. And of course, eat healthy, cut out the sugar, cut out the alcohol, drink water, help you flush all that stuff through your body. But I really, really, really love the idea of having a ceremony. A miscarriage ceremony. And so you can get really creative with this. You can even collect some of the blood or the discharge from the miscarriage and put it into like a little box, and then bury the box, or however you want to create your ceremony. Yeah, and then really allow that process to take place. Like, if you're really grieving the loss, then have a ceremony to grieve that loss.
Yeah.
A couple other things you could do would be like plant a tree or grow something, write a letter to the unborn child, and then take the place of the unborn child and write one back to yourself. You can volunteer for a children's hospital or something like that. You can start a miscarriage support group. You can make art, any kind of art. You can just dance. I was gonna say dance your ass off, but you can dance and really do that too, and have that expression just come out physically out of your body. Write a story and share it verbally, not just on paper. You can make an altar in your house and have like a candle. Like every time you have a thought about the unborn, just light the candle and say a little prayer. And then increase touch, massages, hugging, kissing. You're not supposed to have sexual intercourse for a few weeks afterwards, but you can still do other things that are sexual. Healing touch is going to create more oxytocin, and we want more oxytocin because that is the love hormone.
Yeah, beautiful,
Yes.
beautiful, wonderful suggestions. How about you, Alaina? What kind of practices did you find that were supportive?
Well, in terms of kind of my processing at the end, I made a pyre. So the way I did a natural miscarriage, and with my midwife, so I had to collect and save all of the tissue that came out of me, so that she could make sure that I had, past the placenta and the sac, and because on rare occasions, a miscarriage can go septic if not everything is passed. So she just wanted that visual confirmation. And so I had it like in a little yogurt cup in my fridge. And I was spending a lot of time thinking about it. Like I didn't really know what to do with it. I knew I didn't want to just like throw it in the trash. And I couldn't bury it because I have dogs. They would have just like dug it up and eaten it. So terrible.
It's horrific, but I can relate. My dog dug up my mom's ashes. So anyway.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So luckily it wasn't all of them. Sorry to interject that, but I was just thinking like the image of that happening. It's something to consider. Do you have a dog?
And so I've always loved the funeral pyre. And so I just like got this idea in my head one day. I was by myself at home. It was like 7 o'clock at night. And I just decided that I was going to like do this. And so I like went outside and dug a pit in my backyard and like made a fire pit in record time, and then fashioned this tiny fire, and then burn the contents there, which was a really, really good experience for me, especially because it was so physical.
Yeah.
Right? Like I didn't have a fire pit before. I just like scavenged all these rocks and old bricks from around my property and like dug this pit out. And I used to be a park ranger, so I'm like really proud of my fire building skills, and something about fire really connects me into nature and into the flow of nature itself. So I did all this really hard work, and like I was processing all these really difficult emotions while I was moving and like putting my hands in the dirt and getting sweaty, and then lighting the fire. And it was really good for me. It was a beautiful experience.
Yeah, and that physicality, like what Sunshine was talking about, like you got to move the energy out, right? Because emotions store in the physical, in the soma. And if we're just sitting, then they just stagnate there. So in order to help release them and process them, movement is necessary. And I'm just hearing from both of you how vital it seems to honor and acknowledge this rite of passage. Right? To not just sweep it under the rug and fuck through it, as we say, and, get back to work, but to actually honor our emotions, our experience, to allow ourselves to go through the whole range of emotions associated with it, and to be tender and to not dismiss it, right? That if it's, that if it's a big deal to you, it's a big deal. And yeah.
Yeah, the whole experience felt very ancient to me, especially because I allowed, and I know natural miscarriage is definitely not for everyone, but it was 100% the right choice for me. I spent, it was like 8 weeks probably, right, Davey? Like I was still miscarrying when we were at retreat.
It was super slow. Yeah, it was a slow and ongoing process for you. I remember that.
Yeah, but I just felt incredibly tapped in to, it's like I could feel the line of people who have, vaginas and uteruses who've experienced this back through time. I felt like deeply, deeply connected into the spirit of that, you know, and then to like put my hands in the dirt and to burn what was left just felt really, really
Cathartic. Yeah,
so
ancient and cathartic, and these like
kind of witchy.
yeah, these primal rituals that we as vagina havers and owners have, you know, done throughout millennia. Yeah.
I
So
think
this
it's
is
very, oh, sorry.
no,
I
go
was
on,
thinking,
Sunshine.
I think it's very intuitive to have this ceremony, right? And then I feel like our society kind of blocks it.
Mhm.
But this moment, even though it's a miscarriage, is still a rebirth of yourself and your identity. So it's going to bring, it's a huge shift in your life, right? And so it's going to bring up a lot of things that may or may not be working in other aspects of your life. So even though it's an end, it is also a beginning. And so it's like this awakened awareness back into your psyche, or like back into like, oh my gosh, like this is happening. Like, and so you kind of get this like, that's where the shock comes in, because you're kind of like reawoken to this new reality.
Mm-hmm. It's like a catalyst for growth,
Mm-hmm.
catalyst for transformation, or it can be used as such. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And
So
I've never had, I'm sorry,
nope,
I've
go on.
never had to sit so patiently with my body
Mm.
prior to that experience. You know, I had to do that in pregnancy, but even in pregnancy, you can still, unless you're bedridden, you can still do most of the things that you do. But I had to rest for 8 weeks. You know, I was just told to like sit and be. And had I, again, for me, had I gone and gotten a D&C, I would have pushed myself to start moving again. You know, but like sitting in my body, I just had all of this space and time to really process and grieve and use my tools.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So this is, we're talking about what we can do for our own healing process, but how can our spouses and family and community support this healing process for us? Because, you know, trauma is an individual of you know, healing experience, but it's also part of the collective, right? We can only heal ourselves as much as we can, you know, heal within our community. So how can those close to us and those surrounding us support us in this this process?
Yeah. So I have a couple point of views here. I have pointers that can be for how partners and friends and family should support someone through miscarriage. And then I have like tips that that are used for the partner, so they can also process through the miscarriage. So which one would you like me to go to first?
Well, how about you, Alaina? Which one would you like to hear about?
I'd like to hear about how partners can help themselves, because that's the next person who's most affected I would imagine in most cases. So that's what
and the partners often get forgotten in this situation, and their feelings get forgotten too, and they end up hiding and storing all of that stuff inside, because a lot of times they can't go talk to their partner because the partner is so upset. And so they're like, what? Yeah, where do I go and who do I talk to? And a lot of times, so women will usually show like sadness and kind of this like crying, and on the other side of that, the partners will usually show the anger and the mad. And so a lot of times the woman is like, how come you're not sad with me? Like, and they're like, this is how I'm processing, but the communication gets lost. So this is where it's really good to work on the communication skills. And another thing I want to bring up is this is where the partners will get really mad at like God, right? Why, God, are you doing this to us? Why are we being punished? And a lot of those spiritual aspects will come up during times like this. So miscarriage will actually push the partners to their spirituality and asking why. It will also push them physically and emotionally.
Yeah.
So a good thing to do is to take turns listening to each other.
Yeah.
Like, don't listen and like offer advice, just listen to each other without trying to fix it. And I think like that is so important. And if your partner is not available because she's going through her own situations, you know, you can try to find some friends, like go find your bros, or like go talk to whoever you can talk to at that time. You can join a support group, which is hard to find because miscarriage is not really talked about in our society. But I bet I know there is support out there, and it doesn't have to be just for miscarriages, but a group that you can talk to. Again, eat healthy, drink water, and move your body. Like I can't say it enough. Like go running, go do sprints, go do something very physical that lets you build that lets you release that energy and get those endorphins to come inside. And then also, again, that's where ceremony for loss. I love ceremony for losses, and I feel like it should be participated on both sides.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I got for that.
Yeah, and as you're speaking, you know, it's coming to mind like a grief counselor may be very supportive, or, you know, like we're just kind of expected in this culture to just deal with these huge losses and these huge life things like on our own, right? Just like, oh, figure your shit out and move on, right? Get over it and move on. And again, I'm cognizant of how what we're describing, it's a rite of passage. It is, you know, just like death is a rite of passage. This is a rite of passage. And so calling upon our resources, you know, having counseling or grief counseling or something for those of us who can have access to it seems like a really supportive part of the healing process. How about you, Alaina? How did you and your partner, what kind of stuff did you guys do to heal?
That's a really good question. I mean, in some ways, I'm not very sure because he was really present for me during that time, and I do know that it was incredibly sad for him as well. Like when I told him I was doing this show, he cried, and you know, like he even though we dismantled the fire pit in the backyard, like he keeps the one stone right like where I poured the tissue, and like won't get rid of it. He keeps it there. So you know, he and I as a whole, you know, we just communicate really well and try to hold space for one another. We try to really maintain our connection. We're really lucky in that we are very compatible in terms of how we get comfort. We both really love physical affection, and again, we really like communicating with one another. So he and I cuddle a lot and spend a lot of time together and just talk when we need to. But it's only recently that he's kind of sharing his perspective on how it was with me. Like, you know, we talked about it a little bit last night to kind of jog my memory for today, and that was probably one of the first times we've really gone in depth into what he remembers.
Yeah, it is. That is a very important point, that the spouse or the partner often gets forgotten. And I also do want to interject here and say that not all partners of miscarriages have penises.
Right.
So yeah, so regardless of your genital anatomy, if you are the spouse of someone who has a miscarriage, you know, it's going to be potentially heartbreaking for everyone involved. So we're getting close to running out of time, which is very sad. I think we could talk about this a lot more, and maybe we will again. But if we can do this, you know, somewhat quickly, like, so, you know, after the grieving, after the processing, how do we get on the path to try again, right? Because I would imagine it's terrifying. Like, I lost one, you know, I don't know if I could go through this again, right? So how do we instill those inner resources necessary to take that risk again after this loss? So what do you think, Sunshine? What has been your experience for helping people move forward and try again?
Well, first off, you have to wait until you're physically and emotionally ready. Like that is a shoo-in. But there is a theory out there that getting pregnant within 3 months of miscarriage can actually have better outcomes, with this idea that your body has now primed itself to accept the future pregnancy. So that is one theory. So there's always a positive to everything. But some doctors will tell you to wait. So again, you have to really check in with yourself, self-survey. Am I ready to do this again? And am I physically ready to do this?
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember, how about you, Alaina? Because I remember you got pregnant with a little guy pretty quickly after you miscarried.
Yeah, I did. I would say this is where our Tantra tools are really helpful, because the stress of having a miscarriage, or the fear of anticipation of it possibly happening again, can seriously affect arousal and pleasure when you're engaging with your partner. So having tools to regulate the nervous system, doing deep breathing, doing lots of connection practices with your partner, so that you're not just like forcing your body into sex. You're connecting and feeling really, really comfortable and ready when you do it. That's going to be a huge part, and that was an integral part for me. What was also really important for me was making sure that I had my birth support in line, because I had such a bad experience with my doctor. Not that all doctors are bad, some people have wonderful doctors, but in this one instance, I had a bad medical experience, and I had a great midwifery experience. So I really got in line with my midwifery support. And then when I did get pregnant, I was heavily supported and watched over, and they were very, very careful with that pregnancy, and very, very careful with checking in with me, so that I could feel like so they didn't lose my mind in the first trimester.
Yeah. So having, again, that support systems outside of just the container of you and your partner, but having professional support to ensure the well-being, like body, mind, spirit. Yeah. Yay. Wonderful. Wow. Well, this has been a deep conversation, and I hope it's been supportive for all of you who have had the opportunity to listen. We're going to put a little trigger warning at the front end of this, just to give people a heads up. Don't dive in without being forewarned. So, Sunshine, if for people who would like to work with you to help them heal and transform in relationship to not just miscarriage, but their humanity in general, how can they get a hold of you?
I would love to work with all of you.
Please, sign me up.
But really, you can find me at IG and Facebook under Sunshine Ryan Tantra, or I have my own website, which is sunshineryan.com. And that's where I am. And feel free, like womb healing can take on so many different forms. And like I said before, it's for everybody. It's not just for women. It's, if you have trauma that you're storing within your body, then, reach out. And there is people out there that can help you through things like this.
Absolutely. Reach out for support. And you have a number of different programs and offerings on your site for people of different genital anatomy.
Oh, yes.
Yay.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And you're also a wonderful Tantra practitioner too. So
oh, yes.
that as well. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. The womb healing. I loved what you shared. I loved what you said about like the womb kind of being a garbage receptacle, which is a horrible thought, but is for all of our shitty experiences in life, right? All of our traumas, all of our societal stuff that we don't necessarily process, right? It just gets stored there. And so the weaving of these tantric methods with this understanding of, science and healing and all of that is really profound and beautiful, and with a target on transforming that sacred space within us into becoming a garden.
Right.
Yeah. Like composting all that garbage and turning it into a beautiful blossoming garden. of love.
Exactly. I like to always say, like, you're planting your seed in there, but what's the fertilizer? Like, what is the soil? Like, that's like, we want to enrich that area with the best soil possible.
Yeah.
And so then the rest of you can grow and manifest into this wonderful, beautiful garden.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love that. I love that. And Alaina, for those people that want to play with you and connect with you, you're one of our senior teachers at the Institute. So for those people who feel drawn to do our training programs, they can touch base with you. But then you also have a side gig. So what's your other Tantra website?
Oh, no, just go see me at authentictantra.com.
Oh, okay. Well, then forget that other website. But you also, speaking of gardens, you guys also have a nursery, right?
Oh, yeah. I still work part-time at my family nursery just because I love it. And I love being with my family, and plants are awesome. So yes, that's my other gig.
So let's give your nursery a shout out just for anybody who's in Pennsylvania. What is the name of it?
Oh, it's called Riverview Gardens and Gifts in Berks County, Pennsylvania.
Beautiful.
The heart of PA Dutch country.
Awesome. So if you're looking for some seeds and some fertilizer, literally and figuratively, you can check out that nursery. Yay, wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them to us at authentictantra.com. And just want to remind you that the fourth Thursday of every month, we have our Ask a Sexologist, where we answer those questions that you send to us. On air, bestowing our with our panel of sexologists, all bestowing our varied wisdom and insight. And please make sure to check out our beautiful sunshine Ryan and beautiful Alaina Salks at authentictantra.com. Make sure to stay connected with us between shows, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all the good places at Authentic Tantra. And if you haven't done it already, you should definitely head over to our website and sign up for your free ebook, Tantra is Medicine, Healing with the Tibetan 5 Elements, where I introduce you to the Tibetan 5 Element as a healing, Tibetan 5 Element practices as a healing system, and talk about my journey of healing and transforming my lifetime of trauma and wounding through the practices of Authentic Tantra. Awesome. That's all we have to say tonight. Have a beautiful night, everyone. Peace out. Blessings. Love you. Bye-bye.